News Channel 8 and the WFLA app. You're watching WFLA Now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to WFLA Now, the fifth day for the search of Nancy Guthrie. As we join you here in Tampa Bay, I'm Josh Scott, joined with Garrett Phillips. This is a live shot into Pima County Sheriff's Department, the office there, where they are going to come to us with a press conference, hopefully with some updates for a story that I think it's safe to say has more questions than answers right now, Garrett.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, very much a heavy eye from a national standpoint. And obviously in large part because of who Nancy Guthrie's daughter is, Savannah Guthrie, the Today Show host. You know, everybody is interested in this, and we are seeing a lot of that.
Well, that's right. And right now, you know, this is a time, especially with the Olympics coming up, it is something that she stepped away from. Mm-hmm. You know, we should have been expecting to see her hosting tomorrow's opening ceremonies, and she will not be there doing that naturally because of everything going on. The most recent development, I think, most major recent development, the family putting out on Savannah's Instagram a video in which they ask anybody with any information to send it in, but speaking directly to the kidnapper, saying that they are ready to talk, but that they need proof that their mother is in fact alive. And so very hopeful that we get some form of that. Again, nothing has been announced by the sheriff's office in that regard. Maybe that's something that comes up here today, but we don't know. This could be another Q&A. We could be learning new developments that they release. We're not sure. As you can see here, microphones getting placed on the podium in the sheriff's department there, and then not a live look, but a look at some of this footage of the property there that she was taken from. A large property, kind of not isolated from community, but certainly a lot of land that is that surrounds that building there, Garrett.
There is, yeah. I mean, it's not like a neighborhood where there are homes stacked on top of each other or directly next to each other. They're not sharing walls, anything like that. It's sparse. There's a lot of space. There's a lot of property out there, and so a lot of like the questions that we have seen from people are, you know, how did a neighbor not see? How did a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera not pick this up? So on and so forth. It's because of the space. There's just a lot of space between the neighbors in this neighborhood.
And speaking of, you know, surveillance cameras, right, or potentially Ring doorbells, we're not entirely sure what kind of camera was there, but in that last shot, you could see the little. I don't want to call it a holster,
right,
but the mount on the door that you would expect the surveillance camera to be. That has been removed. We don't know if there's been any development in getting the footage. The one thing the Sheriff's Office did say is that they were in contact with companies to get footage. We don't know if they have footage now. Another thing that they said that they were doing is they had DNA that they were sampling and testing. So have results come back that they're going to announce to us? That's certainly something, some questions that I'm sure will be asked here to Sheriff Nanos as he stands. Again, joining you right now with this live look in here, 1 p.m. Eastern is when this press conference was expected to go. They've been a little bit delayed. Probably right. in both of the press conferences that we've seen this week.
Yeah, we covered one earlier on Tuesday, and I want to say it took somewhere between 8 to 15 minutes before they actually got up and started to speak. You know, obviously these types of things. I think that you could tell watching that Tuesday press conference, especially, that Sheriff Nanos is just not used to the amount of attention that this investigation is bringing to Pima County. I mean, that's something that he said multiple times, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because this amount of attention from a national media source and from obviously from everybody who was watching at home, it led to increased tips. It led to more people calling in saying, hey, I think I saw something suspicious, or I think I might know what's going on here, which could lead to leads. Now, that's good because obviously that means there's a chance that one of those pans out, but it can also be a bit of a crutch because that's a lot of tips that they're going to have to follow up on. Right. It's a lot of leads they're going to have to follow up on, and so that becomes a tough part to struggle with.
Well, and there was a note and a line in that message that they put out a little bit last night saying, you know, we want proof of our mother, but we need to know that it's real proof, and it is the reality. We live in a time now where, and Savannah herself who said, things can be altered. You know, we don't know. Sometimes you don't know if an image is real or not with the advent of AI. And so that is also, I'm sure, something that they are balancing here, because when you have a story of this magnitude with the amount of eyes, you know, you just mentioned it, you're going to get a lot of things that come in. And so, you know, as much as it feels like we don't have a ton of time and time is of the essence here, that is something to consider. There are some questions again. Some people talking about the type of camera, again, that hasn't been confirmed from the sheriff's department, just that there were surveillance cameras both inside and out. We don't know if maybe there are other surveillance cameras taken. We don't know. All we know is that first one that you could see where it was on, by the front door. Some people saying that some companies have, for example, Ring, if you're familiar with it, has a cloud-based uploading where you can see your video there.
That's a lot of people's, chief concern when they talk about the Ring camera footage and they talk about, why don't we have that footage? Because those types of cameras, right, they upload directly to the cloud servers. And so even if the camera was taken, which we've seen reports that might have been the case, it still should have the footage somewhere. And then now we go back to the question of, okay, how long does it take to get into the cloud to download this footage? And that's even right. If they do have the footage, which is certainly possible, they might have it by now, it's not necessarily something they're just going to release immediately, right? They're going to send it in for analysis. They're going to have people look at it. They're going to try and cross-reference with cell phone tower data that they might have, trying to figure out what can we do with this. So yes, we haven't seen it yet, but that doesn't mean that they don't have it or that they don't have access to it. We just don't know yet. It's all speculation at this point.
Well, and one thing to note there too, in situations like this, everybody can see what's being released and covered, and that includes the kidnapper in this circumstance. And so you want to be very careful about, if you're in the police's shoes, what you do release, because as soon as that information is out, that could cause a criminal to go one way or the other. And so that's also something that I'm sure they're considering.
We talked about the national attention that this case is bringing and how that impacts an investigation like this. Part of that is, you're right, because so many different places are broadcasting basically every detail about this case, the more that's released to the public, the more that is now known by everybody, including if there is someone out there who has Nancy Guthrie, well, then it would be also information that they would have access to easily as well. So they have to be very careful what they're letting out, because it's just, like I said, there are so many eyes here, so many eyes on this case, that they want to be careful. They don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing that could compromise this.
Again, and we are waiting for presumably Sheriff Chris Nanos coming up here. In the last press conference, we also had a member of the local FBI branch there who came up and gave a little bit of insight on what the FBI is doing. I believe the two things that he commented on was, that they had the cell phone and they were downloading cell phone information and then contacting cell towers, getting cell tower information, and then again asking anybody with any information, as we've heard numerous times, to call the FBI tip line, to submit it to Pima County Sheriff's Department. Anonymous tips also as well online. Again, that is the stage that is the message we've been receiving from the Sheriff's Department and the FBI, is if you know something, please send it in. And this story has gotten naturally very large, with even the president saying that he spoke with Savannah Guthrie and saying that he directed federal resources to basically go full force towards figuring out and solving this case. So
I see a lot of people, just want to address real quick, I see a lot of people on our chats on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok saying, hey, when is this press conference going to start? You're looking at a live shot right there on the left of the podium in Pima County. It's being set up. They're doing sound tests. They're getting ready. It was scheduled to start around 1 o'clock. These things normally take a little bit. So just repeating that for anyone who's just now joining us on Facebook and YouTube, they are going to start here, hopefully momentarily, but they are just getting set up.
Yeah, seeing some questions about the car that was in the garage. Again, there was some new footage that came out because police did end up going back to the residence, setting up a crime scene tape there, and then ending up leaving some footage of that garage door opening and shutting. Questions like, what was her routine? We know that the reason that they knew something was off is because she didn't go to church. People, having questions about, does she drive herself to church? What was that like? We don't have answers to things like those, but certainly questions about that situation and this other factors we can expect to be brought forward in this press conference here if they do a little bit of a Q&A. And again, we are waiting. 1 p.m. Eastern was when this was scheduled, and so this is not I don't want to say it's not surprising, but it's really not, because every press conference thus far here for the specific story has started a little bit later. And you can even see right now they're not, but just moments ago, the press were setting up microphones there. So shortly, I'm sure anytime now, we should be hearing from Sheriff Chris Nanos and potentially a member of the FBI.
Yeah, we're just taking a live look here. And yeah, look, I get it. I get a lot of people online. I can actually see it right now as our chats are coming in. There's a lot of frustration that, one, this hasn't started yet, and one, that we don't have a lot more information to talk about. You know, that's something that is going to hopefully be addressed today. On Tuesday, I think a lot of people left that press conference. We covered that press conference here live, and we had a lot of people who were complaining online that there was a lack of detail, right, that was being shared.
Well, yeah, and you know, I want to bring up, we're getting a lot of these in the chat right now. People asking for good news, but also notably any news at all. Right. And that is part of this story is how little, I think, has felt like it's come out of the Pima County Sheriff's Department directly. We've had things like conversations around ransom note. We don't know if any of those are legitimate because we haven't heard anything from Pima County about those notes specifically. In the last press conference they had there was conversations about, is there blood inside the house? They were asked about those reports. Sheriff Nanos saying, we're not saying that there's blood in or outside the house. And then within about an hour, a reporter goes up, takes the video, and so there was blood. That's something that, again, we discovered outside of what the Sheriff's Department was telling us as well. So again, we're hoping, and so are many people, to receive some new news, maybe some clarity from the Sheriff's Department here.
Right, and I see, again, online, Casey on Facebook saying that maybe there's a last-minute update the sheriff is receiving before going on air. It's possible. We won't know that, obviously, until he pops up. But, yeah, it normally takes a minute for these types of press conferences to get started. They're almost never on time. And, again, a big part of that is because they're preparing. They don't want to say the wrong thing. It's obviously a very sensitive case, and, you know, I don't want to keep repeating that there's been a bunch of eyes on it, but you can't really stress enough how global that this story has become. No,
and it truly did shift into, I mean, this is not just a national story. I think you hit the nail on the head. It is now global because you've got a major U.S. anchor reporter who was slated to go be one of the big faces over at the Olympics. And now she is not doing that because of this story. And so, you know, Pima County didn't expect to have a story like this to happen, right? And you don't know how many times people have spoken to the press in this sort of way. Right. And so inherently they're going to be a little bit more cautious when they engage with anything here because, again, the priority is getting Nancy home safe and figuring out what happened. And so they are certainly not going to risk any of that goal by giving any information that they might want to hold off on presenting just because of, again, those reasons that we listed. Is the kidnapper watching this? If we said that we had a certain piece of evidence, would that cause something to happen in this case? They're going to tend to lean on the safe side, I think, here. Yeah. And I think history has shown us that in some of these previous press conferences. Absolutely. You know, I want to bring something up here. We talked about this earlier today about the space, right? The neighborhood that this is coming in from. And I just want to bring up, let me see if I can bring it up here really quickly. There we are. That is a map, if you will, that was shared by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Let me see if I can make it a little bit more full screen for everybody here. Sorry, one second. This is live, folks. Technical difficulties. There we go. So yeah, you can see here where there is just this. Let me see. Oh, you know what? The banner is going to cover it up. So I'm just going to come back here. You can see here that where the neighborhood, that where you see the houses, you can see how much space is really in between all of those different areas. So this is, you know, it is not a tight community. When I say that, I don't mean like close as in neighbors close to each other, a tight-knit community. Proximate. Let's say proximity, exactly. So this is, it makes the investigation a bit more tough because, you know, you don't have maybe a witness that you might have in a crowded neighborhood. So that becomes a bit of a problem as well. I just wanted to show that for everybody as well. Yeah, that's right. And we're getting a lot of questions here. And again, there are questions about things like, we talked about this a couple days ago, but it's still an important factor of the story. We know Nancy required medication that she needed to take every 24 hours or else results could be fatal. And we are now 5 days from when this story started. And so, there are definite questions that everybody has, including the family. Is she okay?
Right.
Did she have access to that medication somehow? It sounded like they found that medication when they went to the house. And so if they did have access to that, it would be, it wouldn't be from the house, so to speak. And so lots of questions.
They had said, the reason that they even began investigating this as a crime was because, there was not a sign that this was just Nancy Guthrie leaving the home. Her cell phone, her wallet, obviously her medication were all left behind.
Another thing that came up here, and I'm seeing it, and again, hashtag Hey Josh, hashtag Hey Garrett, to allow us to see your questions sooner. There are certain questions about, who is or isn't a suspect, and we need to be very clear on this. The sheriff's office does not have any announced suspects at this time. Any report, we're probably not going to touch on that unless it comes from the sheriff's office today at this press conference, and maybe that does happen. But any names that have been floated or anything like that have not been official. In fact, they've been denied in a roundabout way, with the Pima County Sheriff's Department coming out and saying, we still don't have any suspects. And so, that's certainly one thing we want to keep in mind here when looking at this story. And again, it is part of just the process is when you have a story this large going on for this long, you're going to have more questions than answers. And so making sure that we give credence to the answers when we get them and have a little bit of patience with law enforcement in getting some of those answers, I think is important, both for the safety of Nancy and for the safety of everybody involved in the family specifically. And again, there's that shot of that camera mount that we mentioned earlier, empty, presumably because the camera went there and the camera is no longer there. So we read through some of these chats here. Again, that's a live look from the Pima County Sheriff's Office now. We were expecting to hear from them at 1 p.m. It's now a little bit past.
We're about 17 minutes past the time when we were expecting to see the sheriff.
Brought up was whether or not a doctor would be getting updates from pacemaker if it was still working. These are all they're good questions.
Right.
We don't have answers to at this point.
Yeah, there were reports that the last time the pacemaker pinged to the cell phone, which a lot of them are Bluetooth connected nowadays, was sometime overnight. I think it was like 2 a.m. on Sunday. It's part of the case. It's unfortunately that's the last that we really have heard from that. And
regarding that angle, yeah.
Exactly. I see comments that the pacemaker had been disconnected. It's certainly possible. Normally how they work when they're Bluetooth enabled is once you get within a certain distance away from it, they just stop working. They stop.
Think about it. If you get AirPods on, right? It's a very similar technology. You walk too far from your phone, you can't hear the music. It's very, very similar.
Okay. There's some movement in the sheriff's office there. It looks like.
So it looks like
there he is.
Chris Nanos walking to the podium.
All right, let's take this full real quick. Hold on one moment. Sorry.
Good morning. I hope you've been kind of informed of the rules. I'm going to try to get as many, if not all of you, an opportunity to ask a question. But last time we tried this, it was just kind of chaotic, people yelling. So I'd ask that you just kind of be patient with me. Pay attention to the questions asked, because sometimes you guys want to ask the same question twice, and you're going to get the same answer. So help yourself get what you can out of this. I'm going to give you one question and a follow-up, okay? But before we get there, I do have some comments. First of all, I want to begin by offering our condolences to our partners at the state Department of Public Safety's tragically lost 2 members last night in a helicopter crash up in northern Arizona. So if you would keep them in your prayers, Colonel Glover and his team, I'm sure, would have greatly appreciated it. Along the same lines, I think you all saw last night, I'm trying to speak up, not yell, because apparently I talk soft. We saw last night the family, they just hurt. understandably so. And so I really want you to know this entire team here, those behind me, and our community are hurting with you. We really just want Mom back, okay? Right now, we believe Nancy is still out there. We want her home. Our department, the Sheriff's Department, along with all of our partners at the FBI, have been working around the clock. And we just want her home and find a way to get to the bottom of all of this, just as you do. But I have other partners out there who have stepped up, and you've probably noticed them in the last few days, if not the last few hours, and you're going to see more of that. I made a decision to contact our PCRIT team, and those of you not local, that's our Pima Regional Critical Incident Team. It's made up of law enforcement officers from this entire valley. Pasquayaki Police Department, Tucson Police Department, Marana Police Department, Oro Valley Police Department, Pima College Police Department, Tucson International Police Department, Sarita Police Department. There's so many of them, and they are going to help us tremendously. And that's really done because we have so much in front of us still, and we're hoping that, I know the FBI has committed a very large number of men and women to partner with us, work side by side with us. We go do an interview, they're going to be there with us. We're going to go look at some evidence or process evidence, they're going to be right there with us. We're sharing every piece of information, all the data we can to get this thing solved. And it's important that my partners in law enforcement know and understand their roles, because it is very large, complex investigation with a lot of moving parts. And we're at that phase now where sometimes we're waiting, right? We're waiting for analysis. We're waiting for lab reports. But even then, when they come back quickly, for example, some DNA, we rushed what we thought was the best target for DNA. We did a rush through and got some of that back. The results were minimal. I think you all know the blood on the porch. That was one we did. It came back to Nancy. That's what we know. But there's still more items that have been submitted. We just haven't got them back yet. But in the meantime, we're not just sitting on our haunches waiting. We do have a number of leads coming in, and that's why we brought in the FBI for one, but PCRIT as well, to be able to get out there and handle these leads as they come in as quickly and as expeditiously as we can. And every single lead is looked at, every one of them. And so we're gearing up. You probably have some questions about what you've seen in the last couple of days. I'll gladly answer those at that time. But it really is about getting our partners out there. To be fair, when we went to that scene the first night, Saturday night, it was just us. Since then, the FBI and others have asked, can we go and see it as well? And that's what you've been seeing. But it is a very important case to not just me and my team, but this entire community, all of our law enforcement partners. Suspects. I know there's been a lot out there about suspects, and I want to be very clear. At this time, we have not identified a suspect or a person of interest in this case. We are working our best to do that. But to be clear, we have nobody of interest or any suspects that you would consider a prime suspect. We're just not there. We're not there yet. The timeline, I think we've got it on the board, do we not? This is a timeline that we have been able to develop with some of the things that we've had processed. Various pieces of electronics that we've gathered. And you look at some of this, and I know you're going to say, well, why did it take you so long to get this to us, Sheriff? Well, because one thing, it's got to go out and be processed at different lab sites, and sometimes that stuff comes back to us, and like you, we have questions. And we say, wait a minute, what is this about? What about this? Could it be that? And so it's sent back, or it's sent somewhere else. So, and that's happening with all of the things we see. that process, that review, and that questioning of, all right, what is it we're looking at? So I'll go over it with you. You can see it on the board there, but at about 5:32 p.m., these are approximate times. 5:32 p.m., Nancy travels to her local family's home for dinner and playing games with the family, just visiting. At 9:48 p.m., which is very consistent to what we were told by the family, that Nancy was dropped off at home, and we know that because we have a garage door open at approximately, I can't stress that enough, at approximately 9:48 p.m. At 9:50 p.m., that garage door closes. It is that time we assume that Nancy's home and probably going to bed. Sunday morning, early morning at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on a camera, but there's no video available. They had no subscription, and therefore it would rewrite itself. It just kind of loops, right, and covers up. That's what our analysis teams have told us. We're not done with that. We'll do all we can, but that's what it says. So that detects a person on camera. Could that be an animal? I imagine that's possible. We don't know that. We just have no video. But we're not giving up on that. 2:28, Nancy's pacemaker app shows that it was a disconnect from the phone. And at 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Nancy and discovers her missing. And at 12:03 p.m., 911 is called in to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. I believe it's about approximately 10 minutes later, 12 minutes later, our patrol teams arrive. They see the scene, and we start our response with our search and rescue teams and our detectives from homicide and various units. In fact, every unit here, I think somebody questioned, how come there's an ICAC member out here or this member? Everybody in our criminal investigations team is a part of this team and part of this investigative effort. I think with that, let me make sure. Now, I want to clarify some things that I may have already done, but yeah, I've gone over with the blood at the front door, the doorbell camera. It was removed, we know that, but we're not confirming that any cameras were smashed or destroyed around the house. I don't know where that came from, but that's something we're not confirming. The car, the car that was at the home, it's just standard investigative practices. It's part of the search warrant scene, court orders. We pull it out of there and do our scene processing with the vehicle. Uber, we did speak to a driver because Nancy, we learned, had been taken the Uber to the family residence, the daughter, for dinner. And we located that driver and spoke with them and got that information. The house, you guys got this, I think, conducting follow-up. I think you said somebody had mentioned that they saw a team out there again last night or yesterday, and that's just, again, what I was talking about before. Our partners wanted a chance to see it and examine things themselves, and more importantly, it's just we're constantly following up on things and go, hey, what about this? So we want to go back and check on some things. Oh, here's the other thing. Someone had mentioned there was forced entry. I have no clue where that comes from. We have been very consistent. We are not discussing that at all, whether it's forced entry or not forced entry. That is something we're just not discussing. So I don't know where anybody got that information. I think I am about done with my piece of this. I'm going to bring up here Heath Yankee, and I think you know him if you haven't been here. John Edwards is the assistant agent in charge with the FBI here at the Tucson office. Heath Yankee is the special agent in charge for the state of Arizona out of Phoenix, and he will come up and speak.
Thank you, Sheriff. Hello, I'm Heath Yankee, the Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Phoenix Division. First, I want to let the Guthrie family know that our hearts are heavy for them. After seeing your message last night, it is clear that you and your family are in pain. Please know that we are doing everything to bring your mother home. The FBI is now working this case jointly with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and we're going to start today by announcing a $50,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie and or the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance, and this will be the missing persons with the reward that will be going out. The FBI has agents, analysts, and professional staff employees working day and night with our partners at the Sheriff's Department. We have deployed additional intelligence and agents from our Phoenix office. We have brought in our Critical Incident Response Group from Quantico, Virginia. Members from our Cellular Analysis Survey team are here, and they continue to collect and process digital information. We are actively reviewing and analyzing information from all digital sources, which includes banks, social media companies, phone companies, and any other organizations where a digital footprint could have been captured. All this information provides data points and helps put the picture together. And we will be in the community continuing to conduct a thorough investigation with our partners. You heard about us out there last night. We will be back out there today. I would ask the media, give our investigators the space to do their jobs while they're out there. Next, regarding the ransom letter. We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously. We are in communication with the family, and while we advise and recommend from a law enforcement perspective, any action taken on any ransom is ultimately decided by the family. Thank you to those in the community that have called in tips. For anyone out there that may have information, no matter how small you think it may be, please report it. You can do so by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI or online at tips.fbi.gov. My next message is to those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from this situation. We will investigate and ensure you are held accountable for your actions. We have made one arrest related to an imposter ransom demand, and a complaint will be presented to a magistrate judge later today. You will get more on that from the FBI and our U.S. Attorney's Office here in Arizona when it becomes available. To anyone that may be involved, do the right thing. This is an 84-year-old grandma. This is an 84-year-old grandma that needs vital medication for her well-being. You still have the time to do the right thing before this becomes a much worse scenario for you. Please return Nancy home. Thank you.
All right, so you want to call them or you want me to call them?
You can call them up.
Okay, so the first person we're going to start with the list is going to be NBC National, Liz Kreitz. Right here.
Can you walk us through that timeline from when you believe, if you look at this here, from 147 to 228, what you think happened there, and what particular software would have detected somebody on camera?
I don't. I know we know the software that was there. But I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm just not in the weeds. I know that. Think of your doorbell cameras. Somebody walks up. My wife's. If I walk up, she gets an alert, and it's usually something like that. A person's detected.
So to understand then, one, does that mean that it was about a 45-minute span that this suspect or suspects would have been on the property? And then also, does this essentially mean that you cooperated with the tech companies and you can officially say that no surveillance video is available from the home?
We know that the tech company that we sent that camera off to, yes, they've said they've run out of ways to recover any video.
Next
was that
person,
about 45
next
minutes?
person's going to be ABC News, Aaron Katersky.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Was what 45 minutes?
Can we say it's about a 45-minute span that somebody would have been on the property then, from 147 to 228?
Yeah, I think those times speak for themselves, and it is about, like I say, those are approximates. So yes. I'm sorry, who was next, did you
Eric
say?
Tursky, ABC News.
Hi, Sheriff. Thanks very much. Is there information that you are purposefully withholding because of the active investigation that might be leading you in a particular direction?
You know, this is no different than any criminal investigation that we conduct here. Law enforcement has conducted investigations since 1865 here in Pima County. We're always mindful of what it is that's in front of us and what we should release and can release. There's legal guidelines that guide us, but there's also strategy too. So, you know, I'll leave that for you to determine.
Now that you are having such an injection of manpower from the Pima critical incident team and the FBI, we get slow to bring that in at the outset. Should all of these resources been brought to bear sooner?
I guess that you know, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. I do it all the time, so you have the opportunity to do it for me. I'll take that hit.
CBS News, Jonathan Vigliotti.
Sheriff, over here, has there been any proof of life, and has there been any sign of life?
I'm going to, anything to deal with the ransom notes and that, I would defer to the FBI, but no, to my knowledge, we're still looking for Nancy.
And for my follow-up question, if I can speak with the special agent, what was it about this apparent ransom note that now 3 days on, you first haven't been able to validate, and second, it warranted informing the Guthries of its existence?
So the ransom note that was sent out there, obviously every lead in this case we are taking extremely serious.
But not
Given
everyone is presented to the family. Why this one?
because this was the ransom that came in and it had facts associated with a deadline, with a monetary value they were asking for. So at that point,
What were some of those facts, if you can, because there's been a lot of speculation, as you know, if you could set the record straight.
yeah, the ransom itself, one talked about an Apple Watch and one talked about a floodlight. We're not going to go into specifics. It's very important that we keep this investigation moving forward, and we don't want to put more facts out there that others then can use to try to profit from this.
CNN next, CNN next, Ed Lavandera.
Hey, Agent, I want to follow up with you real quick on that. There have been, as far as we know, I think 3 ransom notes so far, 1 arrest. Are they all different? Do you think there's different authors behind all of them, or?
So the one that went to the media is the one we are currently investigating and working on. The imposter that I talked about, where an arrest was made early this morning, that there will be more information. We believe there's no evidence to connect this to Nancy's case. It was someone that was trying to profit from it, a total imposter.
And Sheriff, you started off the press conference by saying you believe that Nancy is still out there. Do you have reason to believe that she's still out there alive, or are you fearful of the worst case scenario here, that she won't be found alive?
Well, I'm certainly fearful of that. I think we all are. But it is we operate from a position that until we know she's out there, she's alive, and we're going to continue thinking that way until we find her.
Fox Digital, Mike Reese.
Yeah, sir. Michael Reese from Fox Digital. Sheriff, you said you've identified no suspects. Have you ruled out anyone she was with on Saturday night?
You know, we've talked to so many. I'm sure that my investigators have feelings about this one's clear or this one isn't. But no, I wouldn't say anybody's ruled out yet, because what if I rule you out and then later I learn something else? No.
So my follow-up, you mentioned that you don't know where the reporting of a forced entry came from. Do we know how whoever did this got into her house?
That I would not discuss with you anyway.
Fox News, Paul Morrow.
Question for Agent Edwards, if I may. Agent Edwards, will the Bureau be submitting the DNA for an investigative genealogical investigation relative to maybe hitting a relative, somebody if you will?
I would say the DNA aspect of this case is being handled by the Pima County Sheriff's Department right now. However, should we get to that point, yes, that would be an option for the FBI to assist.
And a quick follow-up, does the ransom note that you're working establish any communication protocols in it?
No, it does not. And that is what I think is important, that if someone has Nancy and is demanding the ransom, that there is communication with the family. We talked about has been no proof of life, and there was no other demands within that letter. So they're still waiting for communication.
ABC affiliate Ashley Holden.
Right here, Ashley Holden. When you say the doorbell camera was disconnected, do you believe that that camera was taken?
We do not have it in our possession. We've not located it.
And then a follow-up. I know that we've been hearing a lot about ransom notes. We were also hearing in that video that was put out by the Guthrie siblings, and I don't know if this is a question for the FBI or yourself, but the challenges of seeing an image and knowing that it's real. Could one of you address that? Has the family received correspondence, any images, videos?
So we're not going to go into facts regarding this part of the investigation. I think part of that message was, with AI these days, you can make videos that appear to be very real. So we can't just take a video and trust that that is a proof of life these days because of the advancements in AI, and trying to actually get a proof of life that we can verify. But we're not going to go into anything the family may or may not have received.
KOLD Catherine Patterson.
So, in regards to a timeline on that ransom note, is that being an impact in your investigation? Are we nearing that timeline?
I'm sorry, one more time.
So, in regards to the timeline in the ransom note, are we nearing that timeline? And is that playing a part in the investigation?
We're not going to go again into specifics of that part of the investigation with the ransom note, other than what we've put out there. We've been transparent. We're talking about we are working that ransom demand, but we don't want to go anything further than that could impact any opportunities. So thank you.
Is there any additional physical evidence at the crime scene other than the technology that you guys are using for this timeline? Is there anything else that's helping you guys other than really the technology?
Well, I think I said on day one is that it's technology that's going to really help us solve this case. But no, I mean, you know, we did do a process of that scene for biological evidence, so we're still hopeful that maybe something will show up there as well.
Arizona Republic Richard Relas.
Agent Yankee?
Yes.
We saw on the scene, I believe it was you, taking a tripod into the home of the sister. How involved was the FBI, if at all, in creating the video? Any advice for the family?
I would say we use our expertise and provide consultation and advice anytime a family would ask for our advice in a kidnapping. It's ultimately the family's decision of what they put out and any messages they put out. But we were, obviously, you're all documenting every move we make. We were there last night in talking with the family. But every decision is theirs.
Right, that was a tripod and a ring light. And Sheriff Nanos, you said the blood was found on the porch and on the front stoop. Just wanted to verify that.
I say porch, front stoop. It's all in that same general area by the front door.
Front of the house.
Front door, yes.
What, given her medical condition and the fact that it was her blood, as you say, what would her medical condition do with her recovery if she indeed bled out or was bleeding when she left the house?
Well, again, I've got to be careful for HIPAA, but I would say this. We know she is in need of medication, daily medication. And we also know that this is day 4 or 5, and still we don't know that she's getting her medication. That could in itself prove fatal.
And for the
No, that'll be that question. For KGUN News, we have Brent Smith or Athena.
I'll get that for you. I'll get his name.
Craig?
KGUN, Athena.
Oh, okay.
Have you been in communication with anyone who you believe could be the kidnapper?
You know, it goes back to what we talked about. Nobody's eliminated, but we just really don't have enough to say, this is our suspect, this is our guy, we know, or our gal. We just don't know that. And it's really kind of reckless to report that someone is a suspect when they could very well be a victim. It just, I bring to you, to the media, I plead with you to be careful of what it is we put out there, because we don't have anybody here listed as a suspect, and you could actually be doing some damage to the case, but you can do some damage to that individual too. Social media is kind of an ugly world sometimes.
And how far out have you expanded your search, you say?
You know, I would tell you this. Look, nothing's off the table. If we get a lead that there's somebody, hey, you've got this over here or over here, we're going, and that will expand and expand and expand. I think the FBI, with their billboards, they're now planning to put those up at every state around here, at all of our neighboring states. So, we use you, the national media, the FBI with their national outreach, to affect that for us. But as far as the actual investigation, naturally the scene is the primary, and we just keep spreading it out as we get more and more leads.
Court TV, Cody Thomas.
Hi there, Sheriff.
Yes.
Actually, my question is for Agent Yankee. You know, we saw Savannah Guthrie and her sibling family put out that video last night on Instagram addressing, you know, the tragedy that this is, but also addressing the ransom letter saying they're ready to talk. My question is, did the FBI or any other agency help them craft that message to put out on social media?
Like I said to the previous question, we have an expertise when it comes to kidnappings. And when families want advice, consultation, expertise, we will provide that. But the ultimate decisions on what they say and how they put that out rests with the family itself.
And as far as suspects, I know we haven't identified one, but what type of suspect or suspects do we think we're dealing with here?
At this time, like the sheriff has said, there is no primary suspect identified, so it could run the gamut. So.
KPNX, Troy Hayden.
Are you actively investigating the son-in-law in this case? I know there were reports earlier this week, and you refuted that. You said you haven't eliminated everybody. Have you eliminated him or come close to it, or are you actively looking at him?
We're actively looking at everybody we come across in this case. Everybody. We would be irresponsible if we didn't talk to everybody. The Uber driver, the gardener, the pool person, whoever, everybody. It's so cliche, but everybody's still a suspect in our eyes. That's just how we look at things and think as cops. Does that mean we have a prime suspect? No, and the family's been very cooperative. They've done everything we've asked of them, and we want that relationship to continue. And sometimes people can be mean out there, and that can really harm us and harm our efforts.
Did you find blood anywhere else in the home besides the porch?
The only DNA evidence we've got back is on the porch. We prioritize things and we rush things, and those items we put out to a lab to rush it. And even then, it's 2, 3, 4 days. The other items could take 10 days, 20 days, but we saw the importance of that blood. It came back to Nancy.
So it was only there, it wasn't anywhere else in the house?
I don't know that. We processed the house for biological evidence, and we've not gotten anything back.
Newsmax, Sarah Williamson.
Hi there. My question is just piggybacking off our colleagues here about how far this search has gone. When it comes to doorbell cameras, you say technology plays a critical role in this. Have you been actively door knocking the neighbours and businesses and collecting those doorbell cameras? And is there anything that has come up there? And how far is that?
I can't tell you whether things have come up or not, but we have door-to-door. I think we're still doing door-to-door, not just in that neighborhood, but other neighborhoods. Just as leads come in and take us somewhere, we're going to do those things.
Okay, and just to follow up as well in regards to the video that was released by Nancy Guthrie's children last night, just to clarify, that was not coordinated with any law enforcement beforehand, and that you hadn't seen that video before it was released?
The FBI is handling all things with the ransom.
I think the answer was yes, we were there. The media was there. We can help coordinate, provide that consultation, but that is the family's decision of what they film and what they put out.
Fox 10, Justin Liu.
Agent Yankee, this one's for you. Following up on that video that was released yesterday, it said, ultimately any further action is decided on by the family. Since then, have they expressed any more interest in and more efforts to try and get in contact with who is behind the ransom letter? And do you have a crisis or any sort of hostage negotiator with your team for that type of situation if it moves forward?
So the two parts of that question I think it's pretty clear. The family wants to be contacted. They know time is of the essence. And if those that may have Nancy are watching this, the family is ready to talk, get proof of life, because there has been no contact after that ransom note went to the media. For your second question, yes, we have crisis negotiators. That is part of our team here locally, along with the personnel we brought in from Quantico, and they will be part of it. But we're not going to go beyond that of any specifics.
Sure, Nanos, taking down the crime scene perimeter after Monday's investigation and really opening access to that property to everyone else, was that something you would do differently looking back, knowing that federal authorities also conducted a search yesterday? Would you have kept that perimeter up, knowing that?
Monday morning quarterback, I probably would have, but I'll say this. We processed the scene. We got what we thought was complete. My team did that. I have to have all the faith and trust in their abilities and their skills, and I think they went through that pretty well. But because another agency now steps in and wants to assist, we're just like with you, we're an open book. Absolutely. How can we help? One of the things people don't see, I heard your question about, and we left and then others could walk up. When we process a scene and we're done, we return that scene to in this case, the homeowners, the family. And we don't just go march back in there. We call the family again and get permissions to go back to the home. So, yeah, there's, again, Monday morning quarterback, absolutely. I probably could have held off on that. We knew that the FBI, we've worked with them before in a lot of cases, and we felt like they could be of help in this with particularly the forensic analysis we use in a number of things. But at the start of this thing, we weren't sure what we had, and as the day progressed, we realized that there could be more to this, and we started in that. Remember, it was a search and rescue mission the first few hours, and we transitioned that over to a criminal investigation. With that, brought in our partners from the FBI and others.
Univision, Claudia Ramos. Univision, Claudia
I was
Ramos.
actually going to ask about that. We saw the message yesterday.
Are you next?
Claudia, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Following up on that, we saw the message from the president yesterday. Have you personally received any communication from him or
No, and I wouldn't expect that. He too is a busy man, right? And I would say this: we thank him for him opening up his entire law enforcement team, as was put out yesterday, and we know, I know my local reporters here know. We've always worked well with all of our partners in law enforcement. Maybe it's something unique to Southern Arizona, and the rest of the country doesn't see that, but this isn't new for us. We've done this. Gabby Giffords, I headed up that investigation many years ago, and we worked side by side. Could not have got things done if we weren't with the FBI on that.
And just the other question, this being a border state, have you guys had any communication with Mexican authorities?
I have not. I work closely with the Mexican consulate, as other consulates, being the sheriff, but no, I've not heard from them.
Arizona, Univision, Manris.
Hi, Sheriff. My question is, do you know, it's a two-part question, do you know what medication Nancy uses? And have you checked the local pharmacies or pharmacies around the state where they bought, per se, this medication to keep her alive, to keep her healthy, while we still look for her?
So we do know what medications, and we have contacted pharmacies. Probably need to go back to just make sure that they didn't. Maybe we contacted them early on. I know that night, Saturday night, Sunday morning. I know we were doing all the hospital checks, and that check was continuous every hour, going back out. And physically in person, deputies were going to each local area hospital and asking them to check their logs.
My second question here is, I know you're looking for her in Pima County. Are you looking for her across the state now? And if so, if there's a particular area that you're focusing on right now?
Well, we're looking for her everywhere, right? The FBI just made an arrest on a tip that we got that we thought there could be something here. There's it's statewide. The billboards are going to be out there across the country. We take leads from everywhere, and where those leads take us, we'll get there.
MS Now, Alex Talbot.
Agent Yankee, do you have any reason to believe that Nancy Guthrie may be being held outside of the country? Is that something that you ruled out at this point?
We don't have any of that information. We haven't ruled anything out. Like the sheriff said, we will follow the facts wherever they take us, whether it is outside of the state of Arizona or over the border. We will follow the facts and go there. But we have no indication anything over the Mexican border.
And you mentioned on the ransom note there were details about the Apple Watch and the floodlight.
Yep.
The ransom notes that were sent out to TMZ, KGUN, and KOLD, are they all the same ransom note? Do they contain the same details in each of those individual ransom notes?
The ones that I am tracking and aware of were the same that went to TMZ also.
News Nation, Brian Enton.
Agent Yankee, sorry.
Yes.
When did the first ransom note arrive? And the reason I ask is because the Apple Watch has been in the news and on social media, and you could see like floodlights on video. So was it before those things were out in the world?
I don't have the specific time frame as I sit here today of what time it came in, but that you are right. Anyone could see a floodlight hanging down, could have seen some of those things. The watch has been talked about, so that timing is tricky, but that's why we're taking it serious no matter what and following the leads on that. But I don't have the time frame that the first note came in as I sit here today. Thank you.
And my follow-up is for the sheriff. In the house, were there any signs that someone tried to clean up or maybe destroy evidence?
I can't talk about the crime scene, so I'll give you another shot, another question.
My other question is, I heard the agent say that it was a joint investigation now. At the other press conference, the FBI said they were assisting. Is it joint now? I mean, are both agencies in charge now?
Look, there's no ego here. We in this part of the country, we'll take anybody's help. It's not about who's in charge. From day one, when we contacted the FBI, they were that gracious to say, whatever you need. And so that's really it. And they're great partners, just as my other local law enforcement brethren. I didn't even have to ask. That's what's really amazing. I haven't had to call anybody. They've called me. Sheriff, what do you need?
Arizona's family, Brianna Whitney.
Sheriff, I know you had the crime scene process. You said you went back out there. Your partners wanted to see it. But you guys were actively taking out evidence yesterday. Was there something you missed the first time, or did you get a new piece of information that led you to believe you needed to go back out and take more than you had that first day?
I know that we get information that will come, and this is just any crime scene that we look at. We may go out to a crime scene and think we've got it all, go analyze the evidence, and something comes back and says, hey, did you check this? We're not going to just say, oops, and not go. Absolutely. In this instance, it really was the FBI just wanted to go, hey, can we take a look at it?
Are you worried about that being contaminated at all because there was people in?
I'll let the courts worry about that. We will certainly be open to the courts of anything that's been removed from that house, and we follow the rules of laws. We get court orders and go back and reapply for another warrant if need be. All of those things we're very careful of.
Arizona Public Media, Lynn Boyd.
Ellen Boyd over here. In that news release yesterday, there was a report of a trespasser. Has the Guthrie family dealt with any incidents, threats, whether that's trespassing, social media threats, anything of that nature?
I am not aware of any of that. I know that we, as with any case, again, we would look at all of the background of calls to those families or their residents and see if there's anything there, or even in that neighborhood. Those things have been looked at. I don't know of anything that was reported in even the last 30 days or 60 days. Nobody's come to me and said, hey, next door you had a burglary.
Follow up for the neighborhood where Nancy's home is. Can you give any more details on that trespassing incident?
I don't have them.
Telemundo, Jesus Gonzalez.
It's for the FBI. I just have a director is coming for the investigation?
Yes, Director Patel is being briefed several times a day on this investigation back in D.C. He does have a trip scheduled to Tucson that was pre-scheduled before this, but he is receiving consistent and constant updates from our team here.
He's coming today?
He is not coming today.
And before you go to the next one, I know you may have had a follow-up question, but I think I overstepped you. So if you wanted to ask, I'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you. At what point do you deem the ransom note not credible if there is no communication that follows up since you received it? Like, what's that timeline where you say, no proof of life, there's no more, this isn't credible?
I think we start to look at what the deadlines were in the note. First, I think was 5 o'clock today, and then it had a second deadline after that. So we are continuing in a normal kidnapping case. There would be contact by now, trying to discuss that. But those are the time frames we are looking at as we move forward.
Are you able to say that second deadline that was given?
I don't have that with me right now. So.
Sorry about that, Brandon. Entertainment Tonight, Denny Directo.
Yes, my question actually is for Agent Yonke. There was a report that said the ransom came from an email and that the FBI was actually looking into that IP address. Any update on that?
Nothing that I can release. Thank you.
And then also, there's also conflicting reports about who was the last person to actually see Nancy and drive her home. We know she took an Uber to Annie's house, but can you confirm whether it was Annie or her son-in-law Tommaso who took her home that night?
I think the timeline that the sheriff provided was a family member, but
Just family. We're going to go with family.
Record TV, Vandry Piera.
Sir, we are for national, so we're not familiar with the area, so we think that it's a remote area. So my question is, why is it so hard to track a car or something suspicious that have passed through the area at that night? How difficult it is, just throwing cameras around or something?
Yeah, you're talking about the challenges we face in some of being in a rural area like this. Those are challenges we face all the time. We'd love it to have all the cameras in what we would consider a more urban nature type area. But once you get out into the community, that's not the only part of Tucson that is that way. And we just find ways to overcome those challenges. We don't just disregard it. We still look at ways to find for example, ring cameras that might catch just a piece of something. It goes by, it doesn't catch the whole car. Those kinds of things. We don't give up. We still go out.
But not, at least a car that came out at the night?
I
Far
can't.
away, like miles from the house.
We have cameras all over, and those things are being reviewed.
Arizona Republic, Richard Relas.
I'm a different person. Let's pretend.
Did he get two?
It's the second one.
Was that you?
Oh, sorry.
No.
We all right. Thank you guys for keeping us honest. No, you already asked your question, so we're gonna go to the New York Times with Reese. And I apologize for getting your name wrong here, Reese. Thibault?
No, you're close.
Thibault.
Hi, Sheriff.
Hi.
The 212, the camera that detected movement at 212, was that a different camera than the one that was disconnected at 147, and where was it pointed?
We don't know that. We don't know which camera that was. When we did the software, it just told us that a person was detected. But I'm unaware of which camera that was.
So there were multiple cameras, and you're not sure?
Sure. There were multiple cameras at the home.
Okay. And is there a possibility that this is not a ransom situation? And if so, what else could it be?
Your guess is as good as mine. I would say absolutely there's a possibility that this is nothing to do with a kidnapping. But we cover all angles. We're not going to dismiss something until we actually know for a fact that it's one way or the other.
People Magazine, we have Danielle Walker.
So I wanted a little more clarity to follow up on his. Is there anything more you can say? Was this actually targeted or not? Do you have any?
That's why we have the FBI to look at those areas where there may have been a target. Maybe it is a kidnapping. But no, we don't have anything to rule that out or to say it is.
And as far as the ransom notes, there was a part in there about Bitcoin. Are you looking into that now, investigating?
Yes, that's part of the investigation. But
Can you go and elaborate any further if you found anything or if there's any ties or any suspects tied to that Bitcoin?
there is not at this time.
Associated Press, Joe Goldendera.
Hi, Sheriff. Just to follow up to a
You're
prior-
Joe?
I'm sorry?
You're Joe?
Goldendera.
Oh, I thought you said Joe. Okay.
Just to follow up to a prior question, you had said early in the investigation that authorities don't believe Nancy Guthrie was targeted. Why don't authorities think that Nancy Guthrie was targeted?
Who said that? Who said they didn't
You had
think
said
she?
that early in the investigation.
Boy, if I said I absolutely misspoke. I've never thought she was or wasn't targeted. We've always believed that is certainly a possibility. I mean, you'd be silly not to think that. Somebody disappears in the middle of the night out of their home. You can understand where I'm coming from. But no, if I said that, obviously I misspoke or maybe somebody misheard me. But I've never believed that she was or was not a target.
Is there anything more specific you can say about what you believe the motive to be for this kidnapping at this time?
Motive's always going to be a question, and we'll know more as we go what that motive is. But right now, my guesswork is as good as yours.
And then we also have the final one will be from KVOA here in Tucson, Monica Garcia.
Okay, so let's talk about that 5 p.m. Did you say 5 p.m. deadline today? Is that the deadline? Oh, maybe that's for the FBI.
Yes.
Can you just give us some sound on that? Because that's a big deal. That's within hours about that 5 p.m. deadline per the ransom note. And then what's supposed to happen after that?
So the ransom note that was distributed to the media did make a demand for 5 p.m. today, and if a transfer wasn't made, then I think a second demand was for next Monday. We're not going to go beyond that, but that was the ransom note the media received.
Did it indicate what would happen if they didn't meet that ransom? Did they?
We're not going to go into those specifics. Thank you.
5 p.m. Eastern, I'm sorry, I know it's not Arizona. It's 5 p.m.
I don't.
It's 5 p.m.
And then, sorry about that, Inside Edition, Jim Murray.
Special Agent Yonke, given the fact that the FBI participated in the creation of this family video, does that suggest your belief that the author or authors of that ransom note, in fact, have Nancy Guthrie?
Again, we're taking the ransom note serious, and we are following that part of the investigation.
And does the fact that there is a ransom note suggest to you that Nancy Guthrie was taken specifically because she's Savannah's mom?
There's nothing to indicate that.
Thank you guys so much for all of your questions. The sheriff does have just one more note about what happens next here, or what doesn't happen next.
Well, it's what happens for us is we're going to continue working. For you though, I hope this worked out well for you. But right now, I have no plans to schedule any further press conferences unless we have some real evidence or something to bring up to you. It's pretty pointless to just keep hounding the same things over and over. And as Special Agent in Charge, Yonke said, please give us some space, and that's not just physical space. Give us some space, give my team some time, because these things do take time, and they are difficult. And everybody out there is really working hard. And mistakes are going to be made, and if I made them, mea culpa. It won't be the first mistake I've ever made. But more important than me is we want Nancy back. That's the key. Okay? So thank you very much, and thank you for your concern in this.
Thank you. If you were looking for the other person that was
All
up here,
right,
it
that
John
was
Edwards.
the sheriff in Pima County, Chris Nanos, as we join you back here from the Stream Center, a major press conference. We learned much more, I think, than I personally was expecting through Q&A. Heath, was it Janke? Janke. Special agent from the FBI there in Phoenix comes in and gives an update about the FBI's role in the investigation, where we are now, a couple of major things, and we're going to get into them, and we're going to go through this, and we want you to be a part of this, right? We know you probably have a lot of questions. We might have some answers, but again, there are still a lot of things left to answer. So we'll do our best with what we can say and what we can relay to you that we've learned through the press conferences that have come out of Pima County. Again, we get a lot of questions here, so if you want your question to be more likely to be featured or seen by us, #HeyJosh, #HeyGarrett. That allows us to see your comment near the top. But again, lots to go through. The blood being one of the first things that Sheriff Nanos said. The blood being the DNA test came back, and they linked that to Nancy.
Yeah, the blood in front of the porch in front of the house was linked back to Nancy Guthrie. Josh, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, I think that people were, especially after Tuesday's press conference that we had, there was not a lot that came out of that press conference. There's a lot more that was revealed today, both by the Pima County Sheriff's Office and by the investigators, the FBI, and the blood is probably the biggest. Here, you know what, let me go back real quick here and just get back to that part of the video.
Yeah, we actually did have a question about how far, people are curious, how far did the blood trail down the porch? You can see right there at the beginning of the porch, it's there. It seems like there's more of a dense buildup of it closer to the door. And so, you know, these are questions that are still answered are still unanswered. Yes. And will continue to grow. Another thing that I think almost got lost in the press conference there, because they started with it, a timeline came out. And this was very interesting. 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. And so we don't know if that means that's exactly when it was taken off. One might be able to presume that, but we don't know. We just know that at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell cam disconnected. And then at 2:12 a.m., there was a person that was sensed on camera.
It's roughly 25 minutes later.
Right.
And sensed on it. They were sensed on a motion detection. There were multiple cameras around the house, as Sheriff Nanos mentioned, towards the end of that presser. Another thing that's interesting, and before we go on in the timeline, is the doorbell cam that was disconnected. A lot of people have talked about, where's the footage? It should be uploaded to a cloud, so on and so forth. You know, Sheriff Nanos mentioned that specifically, that there is no video footage because, for whatever reason, the family was not subscribed basically to the service for that for the doorbell camera service that they have. They were not subscribed, so it doesn't save the video. Anytime that you have, you know, the camera there, some people get it and they use it only simply just so that they can see who's at the door. Some people get it and pay basically like a subscription service to save video.
Right, and we still don't know which company they went with. Again, Ring doorbell is one of the most major ones, and then there's the Nest cameras, and then there's also smaller companies that do very similar things. And sometimes it also can be a setting thing. If you have your settings to be set to after 4 hours, I don't want to see that, or you can go ahead and delete it. Right. Some people have it set. We don't know 100% what that was. We just know they do not have the footage, and they're not expecting to get footage.
Right. We talked about bringing in your comments, and I do want to go ahead and highlight comments as we get them. And this one is from Marie on YouTube, rather. Did they take her meds or find them at the house? Now, we had learned earlier from, I believe, Tuesday's press conference, or actually around that same time, that the reason that this is being investigated as a criminal case is because, there is things left behind for Nancy that you would expect somebody who is leaving the home of their own accord, they would have probably taken with them. Her phone, her wallet were mentioned. I don't believe the meds were mentioned in that same report. You would think that if the medication were taken, right, one, the person involved would have to know that the medication is needed. And two, you would think the family has made it very clear, I think from the very get-go of this, that the danger here is her medication, is that she needs to take it daily. It is vital to her survival. If the medication was missing, I'm not sure if that would necessarily be as big of a push, but I don't want to speculate. I don't know what the case might be here, and we don't really know if they have them at the house or if they took them.
Right, and that's one thing Chris Nanos said. The sheriff, they're saying it's been 5 days, and so that's a big piece of this. Another thing that was a big piece is we got lots more coverage on that ransom note. Again, that was something that was reported on and not confirmed. So far, they have confirmed is that yes, they've received a ransom note and that they are taking it seriously, but they're not confirming its validity. That's a very, very important distinction to keep in mind here.
You had heard reporters, sorry to cut you off, Josh, but they had reporters in the pool had mentioned that there were multiple ransom notes. I think the reporter that asked the question said 3, but they did mention specifically that there has been an arrest made.
That's right.
Now, that arrest, of course, is connected to what seems to be an imposter, if you will, trying to take advantage of the situation. So, whether that means they followed up on one of the other ransom notes they might have received, found out it was fake, and then arrested the person, or whether they, how did that person, go about doing this, where they impersonated this
right?
possible abductor.
Did they track him and expect that maybe they were about to find her, and then
We don't know.
it was just the current ransom note, that is the one that was sent to media that they're taking seriously. It seems they spoke that there were 2 deadlines in the note, and this is something that there was one shot that I thought was, I don't know if telling is the right word, but powerful, where he had to walk back to his co-agent at the FBI and discuss, about the note. And then they said at 5 p.m. today was a deadline for the ransom note. Whether I think he mentioned 5 p.m. for a wire transfer, but we don't know. Again, that was the note, presumably with Bitcoin, and that there is a second deadline as well, and that is for Monday, and that there is not an open. This is another important part. They said there's not currently an open channel of communication between the note writer and the family, and so that's something that they said is challenging here, because they'd expect at this point to hear something back, since the family last night put out a message. So again, lots of things, lots of moving pieces here, lots of questions. We got some answers, and then now we have more questions.
Definitely more questions. I want to talk a little bit about the deadline too. Towards the end there, you heard one of the reporters ask, is 5 p.m., is it Eastern time, is it Arizona time? They didn't really have an answer for that. Apparently it was just 5 p.m. Now you would expect that, if this was a normal case, right, you would expect it to be in the local time zone, because this is, Savannah Guthrie's mom, rather. That becomes a question, I think, for some people, though I'm sure that they're operating off of the idea that it is 5 p.m. Arizona time. They didn't say what the deadline was pointing to. What was the consequence for missing the deadline?
That's right. That wasn't mentioned. We got a question here. Did we get an answer to how Nancy usually got to church? Would it be an Uber? That was never discussed. Well, the Uber was discussed. How she got to church wasn't necessarily discussed. I believe
the Uber mention was for apparently, so that Saturday night before Nancy Guthrie goes missing, apparently she took an Uber to one of her daughter's homes for a family dinner, and that was who the Uber driver that they spoke with. They didn't say anything about that Uber driver being the one that dropped her back off home. Obviously, they didn't say anything about whether Uber is a primary way for her to get to church. But that is where the Uber driver came in, as far as that piece of information went from.
Right, and they spoke with her, or spoke with him or her. We don't know who the Uber driver actually is, but that's where that note came into.
We have another question here on Facebook. Hashtag Hey Garrett here. No service people or deliveries or anything. No lawn people. No home housekeepers. No home nurses. No one. We don't know. I mean, none of that was really brought up. Whether she has anyone that lives with her.
In the first press conference, that was a question that was asked. They asked, does anybody else live with her? And the answer was, she has people for things like lawn care, maybe some housekeepers, but nobody that stays overnight with her there. Not like a caretaker in that sense. So that wasn't. We didn't hear any more questions, involving that.
And Mari, I mean, I think that, I'm not sure that this would necessarily be relevant at this point either, because we know that. Just based on the timeline that they gave us, right? Her pacemaker disconnected at 2:28. That was almost 45 minutes after the doorbell cam was disconnected initially. So it happened overnight, and then by Sunday morning, the family was already alerted to the fact that something might be wrong. So I'm not sure that there would be a time for a delivery driver or a lawn care person to come home and find whatever they might have found there. We don't really know.
There are questions about, see this one here from Heidi. Hey, Garrett, they haven't traced the email or IP address. We heard that question come up, and they weren't willing to answer or say more on that.
And we should point out that in that press conference, they talked about the IP address, whether it be the one related to the Bitcoin or to the email. We don't really know, I think, how the ransom notes were delivered, but there is an IP address. They mentioned specifically that they would not be addressing that at the press conference. And earlier during that same press conference, they talked about how they might be withholding some information, right? Because as we've talked about before, there's a lot of eyes on this story. Anything that they say up there very well could be something that gets back to whoever might be involved in this. So they were pretty, I don't want to say open about it because they didn't confirm that they were withholding information, but they didn't give you a no. They didn't say, no, we're not withholding any information.
Well, and we kept getting this same thing echoed a couple times, and I have the quote written down here: be careful of what you put out, a plea to media, because again, another question was asked to him, as you just kind of alluded to. They said, are you withholding things from us? And they said there is a part of this that is strategic. He did say there is strategy within any investigation about what you do or do not put out. And so we kind of alluded that might be happening here. And
I think that if there is one part of it, the IP address makes a lot of sense. But yeah, we talked about more about the one thing we haven't also mentioned that was mentioned, and actually was mentioned fairly early on by the agent with the FBI there, that there is a reward. There's a bigger reward. We had earlier reported, there was reports rather, that there was a $2,500 reward. That's been upped. Now it's $50,000 reward that is being offered not only for, information that might lead to Nancy Guthrie's safe return, but in a worst case scenario for information that might lead to an arrest for anyone involved. So that has been upped, obviously, to try and get some movement here.
Yeah, and they went for a little bit under an hour, I believe, in the press conference. Felt a little bit longer than we've had previously. One thing that they said is they will not hold another press conference until there is more news for them to tell us about. And of course, if and when that happens, we will be here with you for it. Lots of questions were asked. There was asked if there are proof or signs of life of Nancy at this point. He said they don't have anything of that nature right now, but they're still looking for her. And then he was asked, is there a reason to believe that she's alive right now? And he said, until we know for sure, we're operating under the presumption that she is alive. And again, they don't have evidence yet that, she's not, but they don't have evidence that she is. Right. So it's a little bit of a gray area there.
Another thing that they were very open with was, as far as suspects go, obviously they don't have a primary suspect. But they also mentioned that they really haven't ruled anybody out, that they've been talking to a lot of people. I know a question came up from one of the reporters. There's been a report about if someone in the family could be involved. And, they said, hey, listen, we're talking to everybody, but we do not have any reason to name a prime suspect at this point.
So an interesting question here, #Hey Josh, what are the little floral pieces near the blood on the front porch? I don't know, Garrett, if we can go and kind of just skim through this video right here and see a little bit what we might be looking for here. So you can see the blood here, and then these floral pieces. We got a little bit of the plant piece. I think there's earlier in the footage, maybe later in the footage, right there on the left side, and now it's kind of covered by the question from Charlie.
Let me take it down.
You can kind of see it in the bottom left corner. Maybe we loop it one more time. Good question, about where these plant pieces come from. I don't know what flower, or is this something that was planted out front? Maybe the person carried it on the foot.
Right. I mean, we can't really speculate about any of that because it's we showed you the map earlier. There's a lot of space in that neighborhood. There's a lot of property there. And yeah, it looks like it could have simply just been whether they knocked over a plant outside or whether it got stuck on a shoe
as walking right from inside or outside. But that is, I'm sure things like that, no detail too little. I'm sure the FBI and the Pima County's Police Department are looking over all of that stuff if they haven't already. And again, some questions also about someone reporting if there was someone that was seen around the neighborhood, right? There's going to be a lot of questions like that because the reality is in any situation, something could happen tomorrow and we'd be reporting on it. the fact everything leading up to that is going to have to be looked into, right? If there was someone who was just walking down the street with a hoodie up, and again, I'm talking for any particular story here, that's going to be something that's looked at.
Yeah, they talked about how they're looking at banks, social media, phone data, basically anything that could point in a direction that might lead to a resolution here in this case.
One thing about the message that they put out together was this question: did the FBI assist in the message? It was a very interesting response here. They said, we have people that are experts in handling situations like this. They give advice in these situations, but ultimately the family has the final say. Again, they did not specify if that's why the FBI was there last night, but they did say that they would have given advice, as they give advice in every situation. But at the end of the day, the family is the one with the final say.
Yeah. They had talked, there was a question earlier in the press conference about proof of life. They kind of dodged that question, didn't really seem to want to answer that one, along with a few others that.
One interesting moment was later in the press conference. It was asked, so do we think she now was targeted? Because some reports had that he had said maybe she wasn't targeted. He almost looked surprised by that being a question at this point, saying, if he had said something before, he apologizes that he never thought she was or was not targeted, that both options are still, viable options or potential realities here in this case. And so he wanted to make that clear as well.
There was a question about forced entry and how he said that he didn't know where that report had come from, and that he had not said or would not say whether the home looked like it was broken into or not before the event. Like we said, a lot of answers, a lot of good information came out of this, but still a lot of questions that are looking to be answered. And now we know we're not going to get another press conference from the Pima County Sheriff's Office until they have something more substantial to say. And he made that pretty clear. I saw, as we were watching the press conference, I had seen a couple of people online saying, why are they taking the time to do this? Why aren't they doing their jobs? And, part of it is, first, they have a whole team that is working on this. Just because the sheriff is speaking at a podium does not mean that they're not still actively investigating. He's probably not necessarily involved with the day-to-day part of the investigation anyway, as the sheriff, he's overlooking everything that the office is doing. That being said, he clearly did somewhat agree that, there's no point in wasting anyone's time with every other day press conferences until we know more that can be shared. And then, that's what they're planning to do.
Yeah, we see, some people talking about, the different companies behind the camera. One thing that is important to mention, because it did come out in the press conference, is at this point they don't expect that they've been in contact with the company. Again, we don't know who that company is, but they have been in contact with them, and they don't expect any new developments or any new ability to get, any of the surveillance footage. They think what they have is what they have because of the way that the cameras were working and rolling or taping over events. The newest, I think, piece of information that came from the events was that one sensed some motion that he described as a person, but then he said it could have been, an animal.
A lot of people have, especially again, when you have a space, a property that is as large as what this one looks like, just from a top-down view, a lot of cameras. They talked about a floodlight earlier that was mentioned in the ransom note. A lot of times there are motion sensors there to trigger the light to turn it on or off when you have motion in your yard. So it could have been connected to that. It could have been connected to a different camera. He said there are multiple cameras in the property, so that there's really not a way to tell which camera and whether it was around the back of the building or the front of the building. Only that motion was detected.
Yeah, and real quick, I have this up. The sheriff's office, said that they had an image of a timeline, and so as we begin, I'll turn that back on here. As we begin to go through kind of the final touches on this, again, #HeyJosh, #HeyGarrett, and your question, if you want us to view your question and kind of answer any questions you have about the press conference. This is the disappearance timeline that we're seeing. 5:32 p.m., Nancy Guthrie travels to local family's home. 9:48 p.m., family drops off Guthrie at her home, and the garage door opens. Again, there was some talk about the garage door. 9:50 p.m., the door closes. And then in the morning, 1:47 a.m., that's when that doorbell camera disconnects. 2:12 a.m., the software detects person on camera. 2:28, pacemaker app shows disconnected from the phone. And then at 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Guthrie. 12:03 p.m., the 911 call, and 12:15 is when the patrol officially arrived there.
Right, and there we just mentioned the pacemaker here. Hey, Garrett, is the doctor connected in any way to the pacemaker? Lynn, frankly, I'm not sure, but you would think that if she has a whether it be an in-home, not an in-home, but a on-call nurse or doctor who comes to the home, that obviously that's probably, they are connected in some way. But as we mentioned, that this is connected to her phone through Bluetooth, like a lot of pacemakers are nowadays. And as they mentioned, the pacemaker was disconnected. Part of that being probably because of just whether the proximity to the Bluetooth or whether it just was disconnected on purpose. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But that's more information that we're looking
There's some technologies where it'll upload your information straight to your doctor. We don't know, nor has anybody asked if that's the technology here. Again, there is a new reward raised from $2,500 to $50,000. Seems like that was pushed by the FBI. That was announced, I believe, by the new FBI agent.
Yeah. The next thing, that obviously, as we're wrapping up here, Josh, just obviously, just to reiterate, the next thing that is pertinent to this case, the next deadline, if you will, is that deadline, the ransom note laid out at 5 p.m. today. Now, that could be Eastern time. That's 2.5 hours from now. More likely, it is Arizona time, so about 4.5 hours from now, if I'm remembering correctly. We would expect perhaps maybe more information to hopefully be out by that time, but that is what we're currently working on as far as timelines go.
I've got this question here. How did they know when the garage door was opened? They didn't get into specifics necessarily.
Yeah,
about
I mean,
this.
it's smart technology.
Right.
I can tell you right now that I have a garage door at my home that has an app that I can connect to. So that way, if I needed to, I could let somebody in remotely. I can go to my app right now and turn my garage or to open my garage door and close it, as I needed to. And the app sends you notifications. It sends me a notification every time it opens and every time it closes. I would suspect that Nancy Guthrie's home has the same technology.
It's truly not a relatively new technology as
No.
far as that goes. Even if it was an app connected, if you have a garage door that opens and shuts, it will probably log it in some form. And so if they took the remote or something like that, anything remotely connected to a computer, they would be able to then, try and collect that information, which I'm sure is how this was done. Looking through here, I mean, there were so many questions that were taken. I don't know how many you could say that were answered to the fullest extent. Again, but that was kind of what we expected, right? And they said this over and over again. There at this point in an investigation, there's only so much that they want to put out because they want to make sure that the family, the victims are safe, as well as the strategy of what you may or may not release to a perpetrator who could be listening, right? Because these events are public. You're watching online. The person who took Nancy might also be watching and might be listening, and so you don't want, if you have any sort of evidence about who that may be, you don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to put that out because you don't want to spook the person, especially in a case where you're taking a ransom note seriously, as they are here.
And as I'm just pulling this comment up, hey, Garrett, do you guys think the officers are leaving stuff out? I mean, they said as much. They said that there was a good possibility that they're not saying everything. And then when they asked about that IP address, they just said they weren't going to comment at the time. So, yeah, I mean, obviously they are. And that's, that's part of the job. That's something that is the right way to go about it so that you don't, give the investigation away too early. This last one here I see from TikTok, hashtag, hey, Josh, did Savannah say anything or get any threats?
So last night we saw they uploaded a video about 4 minutes, 30 seconds long, which was kind of a direct thanking everybody for the support and asking for prayer as well, but then a direct message to the perpetrator saying that they are willing to talk now, but also they wanted proof and still want proof, presumably, of Nancy's well-being or that Nancy's alive. And again, we don't know all of the circumstances surrounding the production of that video. We do know that they met with the FBI last night. The FBI asked if they could go back to the home, and they spoke with them there, but we don't know to what extent the FBI had in the production or helping of that video come together. I don't think there's been anything, any valid threats or anything like that, any reporting on anything against Savannah so far.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, we're just checking in on a few things, just making sure everything is.
As we go
date.
through here, it was there's gonna be a lot of things that come after this press conference as well. There's already websites like WFLA.com, which is where you should be going for all the latest here, that will bring you breaking news, because it was just a couple days ago that we had the press conference. The press conference ended, we got off air, and an hour later, I believe there were some people reporting about the ransom notes that had been sent to the media. So this is surely a story that's going to continue to gain notoriety and lots of stuff going on. So again, if you want to be up with the latest, you go to WFLA.com. And if any news, if any other press conference or something like that comes here in the Stream Center, we will be sure to bring it to you. I'm Josh Scott, joined by Garrett Phillips. Thank you for being here. Take care, everybody.